Welcome to the JD Bunkis podcast. Tons of ground to cover today. Jay's front office spoke yesterday. And I'm really going to deep dive it later in the show. I'm going to go over what exactly I thought was important, which I'll be honest was less than I expected. And some of that's on me. Some of that's on me because I have watched every interaction that this front office has had with the media at large for nearly a decade now. And I shouldn't have been surprised, I guess, by the way they answered certain questions. And yet I was. So I'm going to get into that. I've got Shi Davidi coming on at 10, second hour of the show. He and I are going to kind of go over some of the cryptic ways they spoke about certain players, the way that they spoke about payroll, and just the vibe of it in general, which I thought was somewhat strange. Here's what I will say. This is the positive of it. They say success changes people. And usually that's meant in a non-flattering way. You say that about someone like, wow, dude, this went to your head. I didn't get that impression from these guys at all. I thought they spoke eloquently on what the run meant to them. More so Shapiro, who has always been, out of the two guys, the one that gets the reason why he's in Moneyball. Well, a character he did not like portraying him in Moneyball. He gets romantic about baseball. He seems to have a more innate ability to express the way that the game makes him feel. The people that are around him, the appreciation of the moment, and all of the little things that surrounded a run like that, as well as the big picture of it all. It seems as though he is going to be staying, which is the news, but also was already kind of assumed, and they haven't worked on a new deal yet. I genuinely wonder if the reason why Shapiro and the reason why Schneider, they weren't announced at the podium to have contract extensions was that these guys are actually hurting so badly because of the loss that they are like the rest of us, where they didn't want to talk about anything Blue Jays for a couple of days. It sounds crazy, but I couldn't help but feel that because, yeah, the pain that they were exuding from the loss seemed to be real to me. Obviously appreciative of the run. It's the same thing as many of us. You try and reflect on all the great times, the passion that this country showed on the run, the way that the team performed, the way that they resonated in particular with this country, with this city, how desperately it felt like we needed it. I think they would feel the same way given their track record in the city and the way that they're perceived. But to me, yesterday was sort of a layup to generate a little bit more excitement. And that's not really the path that they decided to go down. So again, the comforting part is this is always who they've been. And expecting some kind of wild deviation is probably more on the viewer, aka me, than it is on them for not seizing a moment. And because they've always been cagey in their answers about the ball club, I shouldn't extrapolate too much in terms of pessimism or optimism either way when it comes to the future of the baseball team. I'm trying anyways. I'm really trying. But like, okay. People are excited. They're hurt, obviously, but they're excited about Blue Jays baseball. They're excited about the future. They want 2026 to be a repeat, not the team falling off of a cliff. They don't want a significant amount of change, but they certainly are hoping that the team has the ability to do so if a clear and obvious opportunity presents itself. And it just didn't translate to me that these guys really cared about that. And particularly Ross Atkins, who I just, again, I tell you how I see things, all right? So you can criticize it. You can say I'm reaching, whatever. I didn't think Ross Atkins had a very good media conference. I thought that the answers were really short, did not give people a window, said this thing about not wanting to put himself in a box, sort of ducked questions. And it was right there for this team when they have all of this equity to kind of say, we are doing everything possible to build off of this, and we are doing everything possible to increase payroll. We are going to be doing everything possible to bring back Bo Bichette. And it was just kind of, it felt like a media conference from the times that they have been criticized or where the team is not going well. And that to me was a little odd because people were looking for things to cling on to. People are looking for reasons to be excited. And I don't really think that anybody got that. Some decent reflection, fine. Optimism about the future, not sure you got too much there. Anyways, Ariel Helwani of the Ariel Helwani Show. He's in the city, but he is not here. He's too good for our tiny little studio. He's got to go where the money is. He joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing? Look at that.
Hello, JD. How are you? Look at me. Look at you. I think I'm like around the block.
Yeah, you are.
And yet, not big enough to get an invite.
You got the invite. You got the invite. That's a lie.
Token invite.
No, it was a real invite.
Is that a San Jose Sharks hat? What are you wearing there?
We moved heaven and earth to try to get you here. We literally did everything possible, and yet you still poo-pooed it. You still said,
"Look at this setup. Look at this beautiful setup that I've given you."
It is very nice.
No one's ever come on the show looking this good.
Is this what you're doing with them? Like, is this where you're going to be in that studio?
So I'm here at CBC Sports HQ. We are getting ready for Milano Cortina 2026. I will be covering the Olympic Games for our national broadcaster over in Italia. Bellissimo. I'll be boots on the ground over there, just like I was back in Paris in 2024. And it's a massive honor. Look at this. This is incredible. Just a small town guy making it in the big city.
Yeah,
amazing. What a life.
Just a humble nobody who you just had no one can believe it that you're there. Okay, so I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about the Jays before we get into one little MMA story that has the attention of just about everybody around the globe right now. But how are you processing the grief, like the ups and downs of this? Because you are a very tortured sports fan. Like I would put you in the elite echelon of tortured sports fan. You lost your. I don't want to I'm swear to God, I'm not trying to rub this in your face because like these things, some of these things have happened to me. But it's like you watched your team lose 4 straight Super Bowls. You have lost your baseball team, and then they went on to go win a World Series in a different city. You cheer for a basketball team that was once covered in glory, but since has, I think, celebrated getting to a conference finals. And
we're getting there. We're getting back there.
You have bought into a Blue Jays team that was incredible, was like this unbelievable ride. And yet it ended in one of the most heartbreaking fashions in legitimately baseball history, which is, as you know, quite lengthy. And yeah, I think that your perspective on this is kind of interesting because, you are the quintessential like sports fan who gets punched in the mouth over and over and over again, but keeps getting back up and keeps kind of showing hope.
Well, forget about like my entire lifetime. What about the last 10 months that I've experienced as a sports fan? Bills lose in the AFC Championship game, in a game that I thought that they were going to win. They were right there. Fourth quarter, you know what happened. That was in January. May, Knicks have a historic collapse in game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals, lose game 2 at home as well, and then have to swim upstream and then lose in 6 to the Pacers. I thought they were the better team. And then this. It's been tough. But as I've told my kids and as I've tried to rationalize, I'd rather experience this after the dust settles than be, I don't know, a Senators, Rockies, Charlotte Hornets, Cleveland Browns fan. You know, like teams that are never in the mix, that are never even playing late into the playoffs or late into
sports
the season.
Apathy. You don't want sports apathy.
No way, man.
Yeah.
You only get one shot at life. And look, at the end of the day, I would love to experience one championship. I've
Mhm.
never experienced a championship, one of my teams winning it all. I don't know what that feels like. I thought I was literally 2 outs, 4 strikes away from experiencing it last Saturday. And the Montreal component to all of this really, really stings because there are a lot of Blue Jays fans, and I'm pretty steadfast on this. If you've experienced a championship in your lifetime, I don't feel bad for you. I don't care at what point in your life. If you've experienced your team holding that trophy, whatever trophy it is, I do not feel bad for you. And so there are a lot of Blue Jays fans who yeah, I sympathize with, but I don't feel bad. You're not in that category because you don't remember 93.
Mhm.
I never experienced anything. In 93, I was not a Blue Jays fan. I was a
Mhm.
Montreal Expos fan. In 94, we had the playoffs ripped away from us. We had the World Series ripped away from us. So all the Montreal fans that evolved at the Blue Jays fans, I would argue we're hurting even more in the aftermath of all this, but it's not a competition. Ultimately, it was a great run, so many great memories. We're the classier team, we're the better team. Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes, an outfielder doesn't want to pick up the ball when it's like slightly lodged. Sometimes you're out by a spike. These things happen. But I'm very proud to be a Blue Jays fan. I think they're going to run it back. I think they're going to be just as good, if not better, next year. And we'll have our day in the sun, just like the Bills are going to have their day in the sun. And
Mhm.
I'll be watching the Bills winning the Super Bowl in Italy in February, which will be wild. And then there's a very good chance that I'll be experiencing all 3 championships within the next 365 days. So I'm very, very excited and optimistic about that.
I gotta tell you, I hadn't thought about that, but if Buffalo was in the Super Bowl and you stayed in Milan, like you have to have some
That's where I'll
clause.
be.
No, you have to have some clause. You have to have an out clause, like a player contract. How do you not factor that in? That you're flying back and you're going to Buffalo if the Bills are in a Super Bowl. Like I don't know how you wouldn't make that happen. Okay, so
In a weird way, I feel like it will be somewhat poetic. Like this is every year,
no,
you're there, you're at home, you're on your couch, you've got your tchotchkes, you've got your superstitions. Maybe it was supposed to happen at 5 in the morning in Milan. Maybe it was
mhm.
supposed to be this way. I'll take it, man. Any way,
Listen,
shape, or form. I just want one. I just want that monkey off our back.
I know you're a lone wolf. I know you're like a do-it-yourself guy. Like that's where you've been with your career, but the best part of a championship, and like I can tell you this because I have two. Like I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. They won a Super Bowl, and I love the Toronto Raptors, and they won an NBA championship. Like the Seahawks won, and I was on my couch with friends, and they were like, "Hey, good for you." But then it's like over. You're just on the merch shop, and just like I don't know. It's about being around the people, and like that was the
Now,
cool thing
listen,
about the Raptors parade is
you
that
trying to get me to quit my job here? What are you
yeah,
trying to get
I
me to
am.
do?
I didn't say quit. I said have an out clause. I was like, I thought you were you had a good agent. I just assumed that given your
I'm a
stature that
professional.
you were
It'll
like
be
with
great.
CA and that they would have figured out a way to have an out clause for you, but I guess not. Okay, so you said that they're the classier team, and I have deeply enjoyed watching you go toe to toe with the Dodgers
Jeez.
and their parade because okay, let's put it this way: when I criticize, and I've saved this for you, I haven't talked about the Dodgers parade. I can't really watch it like I see a clip and I just get traumatized and I'm immediately out. Like I'm off. I'm done. I saw the Kike Hernandez thing that you criticized. I'm obviously aware Joe Davis was with them. We didn't watch the Joe Davis calls. I didn't specifically because I was at every home game, and then I'm watching Dan Shulman and Buck Martinez call the World Series here in Canada. But I thought it was a really awful look for baseball to have Joe Davis call the World Series and to be waxing poetic and see the clips of him talking about Clayton Kershaw as the Blue Jays are drubbing the Dodgers in their own stadium. And then for the guy to get on, yeah, to be on a float, to be there, calling the Dodgers parade. I'm not a journalist. Like, I'm an opinionist. I do a show. So for me to criticize somebody like that, I don't think carries any weight because I'm just a local homer. But to see somebody like you actually criticize it, I think does matter because you are a actual journalist.
So here's the thing. It is not a novel concept to have the play-by-play guy on the local broadcast also be the main
Yeah, a
national
national guy.
broadcaster.
Yeah.
uh, Mike Breen. I'm a
Yes.
huge Knicks fan. Mike Breen is the voice of the Knicks on MSG. He's also the voice of the NBA on ESPN. But my opinion is, and hopefully we'll get to find out in June, Mike Breen would never do that. Because, look, America, everyone outside of Canada watched the Fox feed. And I don't think Joe was biased. I know some people were mad about it. I think it's just a like subconscious thing. I don't think he was
Oh, he
biased. I
was
think him and
definitely
Smoltz
biased. I
did a
saw some
fine
of the
job.
calls, man. Like he was so pumped when they won
I
the.
was fine. I just didn't like his series clinching call.
Yeah.
Beat the champ, you got to knock them out. Like quite literally, that is not accurate. You don't have to knock out the champ. And oh, by the way, he recycled the call. He used that same call back in 2018 in a meaningless series against the Diamondbacks or the Padres when Matt Kemp had a walk-off. You can't recycle game-winning World Series calls. You don't do that. So that's just a little unimaginative, and that pissed me off in the moment. But yes, I 100% admit and concede that I'm bitter and salty. I've told all the Dodgers fans this. So I went on my show and I talked about the fact that I didn't think that it was a good look. They could have had anyone else. They could have had an alumni, another broadcaster, one who wasn't working for Fox, MC that. Literally 2 days ago, we saw you at the Rogers Center being the national broadcaster down the middle, trying to be as unbiased as possible. And now you're dapping everyone up. You're holding the microphone. You're holding court. You are literally the MC of the parade. I don't think that's a good look. And I don't think Fox should have allowed that. If you want to be our national broadcaster, there's just some things that you probably shouldn't do. I'm not saying drop the Dodger job, but like don't be a part of the celebration like that. You
Yeah,
get what
obviously.
I'm saying?
Of
So
course.
that annoyed me. I was so happy that the celebration at the parade happened while I was on the air because I would have been enraged. But afterwards, I pick up my phone and I like Blake Snell. I've had him on my show. He's an MMA fan. I didn't
I don't
appreciate
like him.
mocking the lodge ball hands up in the air thing. Like that's a controversial moment. It stings. I get you guys are happy. You're probably a little tipsy. You didn't have the best series, if we're being 100% honest. I don't like the fact that the guys who got an A on the group project are the ones who are being the loudest with their trash talk. Yamamoto want to trash talk? Go all day. You deserve it. You've earned it. Just like a lot of people are hitting me with like, oh, you're saying that they're not classy. What about the Yankees lose? Vladdy could trash talk. He earned that. He was the man. He was the MVP of that series against the Yankees.
Yeah,
When
but
you're the
also
man,
that
you
was
could trash
coaxed out
talk.
of him,
But for
like,
Blake Snell,
yeah, against a division
trash
rival.
talk, it doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, no, I don't view the Vladdy thing as the putting your hands up or even like watching Blake Snell and Glasnow do the if we can't beat him, join him thing. Like, I just found all of what they did to be very cringy, and a lot of it seemed just like a pure lack of self-awareness. Couldn't stand any of it. Like I said, I didn't watch as much as I guess maybe I should have if I wanted to make content off
No,
of
don't
it.
do it.
But yeah,
Don't do it.
I couldn't stand all of those pieces of it. And like, yeah, Kike Hernandez is I actually will say this. You have to feel some measure of happiness that Kike Hernandez replied to one of your posts criticizing him, because this is my spin on it. If you just won your third World Series, if you're talking about yourself as triple champ and you're doing all these things and it's the greatest moment of your life, but then you're reading the comments, I think you feel some kind of lack of like you're looking for something online to feel some kind of validation, and he's not getting it.
What? I'm not trying to start a fight with Kike Hernandez. If he walked in front of me here, I probably wouldn't know who he is. I'd say, thank you for my DoorDash. You know, like, great, you got 3 in a row. Amazing. Or 3 of your last 6, whatever it is. So did Judd Bushler when he played on the Bulls in the second half of Jordan's championship run. Amazing. Pajes saved your ass. You thought the series was over. You misplayed the ball. You got lucky. Amazing. Oh, you got a double play in game 6. Tremendous. Like, you're a big leaguer. You're a champ. There's nothing. I just think that, you know, if you are a triple champ, act like you've been there before. And the behavior that I saw on Monday didn't really exude someone who's been there before. It looked like a guy who was winning for the first time. You'd think that a triple champ would just act with a little more class and decorum. Apparently, that's not part of the system over there. And God bless. I can assure you, if the good guys would have won, and I'm not even doing the thing like the better team thing, like they won fair and square. They didn't cheat. It was a great series. Sometimes balls break the other way and all that stuff. Who cares? But I can assure you, if the good guys would have won, you wouldn't have seen that from the likes of Clement or Barger or even Vladdy. Like, they wouldn't have acted that way. Oh, the Yankees lose, big deal, big deal.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the same, not even close to being the same. I maintain that. I'm just happier that I root for the classier team. That's all.
So
hang the banner, classier team, 2025 champs.
Yeah. I mean, that's better than people calling for an appreciation parade of the Blue Jays, which
You know what? I didn't actually hate that idea.
I hate
Can I
it.
be honest with you?
No.
When the Bills lost their first Super Bowl, wide right, Scott Norwood, Giants, they actually had a parade to tell the players, like, we love you, we appreciate you. There's a great moment. Norwood gets pushed to the front. He speaks to the crowd. He says, we'll be back next year. They were. Life's too short, man.
Yeah, sure. I get it. I just think that your second place parade was all the people showing up in the buildings and celebrating the going to the World Series and the moments that you had in the ramp up. And like, no offense, but like, we're not trying to be the Bills here, all right? We're not trying to be the Bills. Okay,
I'm not saying have the floats and all that, but a
yeah,
little gathering
nah,
wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world.
MMA gambling scandal. The world now knows who Isaac Dulgarian is. I don't know if I said that properly, but I think it was reported $16 million came across his fight.
I don't know if that's accurate.
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate.
Well, that's why you're here to kind of parse through all of this. There's a million different things online right now, and I'm trying not to buy into any of it. But Dana White, he gets on TMZ, he gets uber defensive about, hey, we have the best gambling tracking in the world. And I actually do buy that, because you see even the way that the NBA betting scandals have been handled. And just like even some minor things with the NFL and the NHL, they get nipped in the bud because we have the ability to track weird gambling patterns immediately. But, I'm watching you on your show and you're getting text messages during it about guys getting asked to throw fights or fights that were potentially thrown. And I know you got to run, and this is like a very complicated topic, so we'll probably have to explore it at a later date. But are we at the tip of the iceberg of this story, or have we already seen the meat of this story?
That's a really good question because, 3 years ago, there was a story involving a fighter named Derek Minner and his coach, James Krause, where it was revealed that Derek threw a fight. He was injured, told some people that he was injured, and lost in pretty quick fashion. The FBI got involved. Krause got banned for life. He's a former fighter, then coach. Banned for life. You couldn't train with him. If you were a fighter, train with him. You wouldn't be allowed in the UFC. Minner got released. Jeff Molina got suspended. Jeff Molina was another fighter who was involved in this story. But the reason I bring this up was it just all kind of dissipated. Like, we don't even know the status of the FBI investigation, whether it's ongoing, whether it's not, what they found, what they didn't find from that story 3 years ago. And so I am curious, because it's very early days here, I'm curious what this will lead to. I will say the aftermath has been a lot different than that one, because I went on my show on Monday and I said, this is a thing. This is a problem. People are coming up to fighters and saying, hey, I have 100K. Will you throw your fight? And I'll pay you on the back end. Or, hey, here's money that you won me after I bet on you. Let's talk. Things like this are happening because, as you know, there's no barrier of entry in MMA. Like, you can literally walk into the best gyms in the world right now and talk to these fighters. It's not like you have to get into some training facility or something like that. And so a lot of these stories are popping up. Fighters came out and said, yeah, this happened to me. And then they quickly deleted it. Of course, someone probably called them and said, that's probably not the best thing to do. So this one feels a little bit different. UFC is washing their hands of it. They're saying, we're getting ahead of it. We called the FBI, this, that, and the other. But if more fighters start to speak up, and it's happening to me almost daily now, like, I got a story for you, check out this fighter, this happened to me. That didn't happen 3 years ago for whatever reason. So this one does feel different. And as you know, other than a fighter dying in the cage, this is the worst thing to happen to the sport. And I don't think it's a UFC specific problem. People have told me about stuff in the PFL and other organizations as well. But once the integrity of the sport is being questioned, and there have been some wacky judges' decisions, referee decisions, especially in the last month, once people start thinking like, yo, man, something's not right here, something's not kosher, the whole ship sinks. That's why people started to turn on boxing. They didn't like the decisions. They didn't trust the promoters. They felt like something wasn't on the up and up. And so once this starts to happen, it's a very, very slippery slope. So they have to get behind it. They have to try to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible. And it's tough because the sport, as you know, is the Wild West. How you police it is going to be very difficult. And so I'm really curious to see where they go from here.
Well, and I think that's the major issue and difference. Like, when you say it's not exclusive to this sport, it's also in others. Like, yeah, we just saw the Terrier scandal, like, right? And what's happened in the NBA. It's harder to fix an NBA game than it is to fix a fight. Like, you need
so
one.
easy to fix a fight.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you need one participant and you can make this thing happen. And this is like also with the UFC, as you mentioned already, but like, it isn't just this one instance. There's been, like, remember the TJ Dillashaw thing with the shoulder, and like everybody knew, and there was some weird betting stuff, and then they tried to change the transparency. There was, I can't remember the coach that was providing MMA gambling picks, the name of the guy. He was Krause, James Krause.
James Krause.
Yeah, James Krause, who had like that whole thing that everyone was like, what the hell is this exactly? And that sort of dissipated and went away. I don't think that this one will. I think that this one's going to stick with people, and until they can like actually show a little bit more proof of the steps that they're taking in order to ensure that this doesn't happen, you're going to have a lot of raised eyebrows. Anyway, I know you got to run. You got interviews today. I appreciate your time as always. And yeah, enjoy our beautiful city, my friend.
Thanks, my man.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
See you, buddy. Ariel Helwani of the Ariel Helwani Show. Yeah, like this is a huge problem. And it kind of dipped a little bit under the radar because for us in this country, because we're all watching the Blue Jays run and everything else kind of came secondary. You were like, oh, what, the Leafs lost to Columbus? John Tavares scored his 500th goal? Like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the Raptors season started? Oh, they lost a bunch in a row? Whatever. They lost to Wemby? Okay, who cares? Move it along. Move it along. What's this thing about the MMA? Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, I won't use the $16 million number anymore because, yeah, I trust Ariel's reporting more than anybody else's. I also have seen many other tweets from like journalists, those air quotes, who are reporting that there's about to be all these other things released. Dana White has gotten out in front of it and said that this is not the case, that they have this unbelievable tracking system that has been working with them for years, and that this is their first instance of something like this happening, and they caught it, and you should be optimistic about it. It's sort of a similar spin you've gotten from the other leagues that have dealt with this, which is, and I do think there's some merit to this, like from the standpoint of the NBA and the NHL and the NFL, which is, I'm sure shady things have happened throughout the course of sports history. And it was harder to actually police it than it is now. So for those of you who are conspiratorial, for those of you that think like everything is a fix and everything is like on the, like, we do have mechanisms in place that are unbelievably accurate, and weird betting patterns get flagged immediately. All kinds of betting patterns get flagged immediately. The software that these guys employ to track this stuff is world class. And if you're trying to avoid situations like this, we've never been better prepared. That's just a fact. So if you think like because sports gambling has gotten bigger now in terms of the public eye, that has somehow made things worse, I don't buy that theory whatsoever. I just don't. I think that having better ways to police it, track it, and discourage it, that's a way better system than what we had in the 90s. Like if you're aware of even like the Black Sox scandal, you know how it took breaks in order to be able to crack that. What I will say, though, which is what the major problem is for the UFC, is like you watch it happen in the NBA and you're saying like, okay, that's a player prop. We've seen it happen back in the day with college football with college basketball with point shaving. But ultimately, like in order to throw a basketball game to directly impact a result, it's hard to do. Really hard to do. Same with an NHL game. I don't even know what you would do with an NHL game as a player. Like I don't know what that looks like. Again, the NHL's gambling scandal so far has simply been a player gambled on a different sport on the premises, which is not allowed in these sports, and I kind of think is not a silly rule, but yeah, like who ultimately cares? The Detroit Lions had something similar like that too. But in a UFC fight, any combat sport, like you've seen the movie Snake Eyes, right? If you're old, you can have a fighter take a dive. You can have a fighter throw a fight very easily. You can have an official score a fight different. Like there's just too many ways that you can have something turn. It's too easy. And as Ariel said, the access is completely different. You can get to a lot of these fighters, especially guys lower on a card, than you can get to LeBron James or anybody on an NBA roster. Like, I love the UFC. I love mixed martial arts. I'm a believer, like, this is the world's oldest form of competition, hand-to-hand combat, trying to find out who is stronger, who is the better fighter. There's something about it to me that is especially pure, that you don't need to come from means in order to be a mixed martial artist. There are some sports where that is true. It's accessible to everyone. There's a national pride component that is very cool. Like which country has the baddest guy? Which country has the baddest set of people? who's training the best, who's coming up with innovative ways to win fights. I love it. I really do. But that same purity is, again, what's making it vulnerable. That you have access points all over the world. You have access points to people, just one person. You need one person that you can get to, and it can compromise the integrity of an entire sport. And yeah, people are betting. I think more people are betting now than ever before. And there's a lot of conversations to be had about that. But it's a big if you're going to advertise the way that you do with sports betting, if you're going to make it such a vital component of the sports ecosystem, you got to be on top of it. And if you're the UFC and you want to remain credible and you don't want to have people questioning the result of every single fight, you got a lot of work to do. You're going to have to open up the books. Like, you're going to have to show people a reason to believe in you, because right now, when something like this happens, I don't really care if Dana White called the FBI. Like, afterwards, I don't really care that they caught this one when a multitude of fighters are deleting posts about who approached them and how something happened. And Ariel's doing live shows and getting text messages from people during those shows, illustrating that there are problems here, that the approaches are problems here. And I don't know what the solution is, honest to God. I don't even have a thought as to where you begin with this. This is a nightmare for that sport. He's bang on. This is as bad as it could possibly be for mixed martial arts. You cannot have that mentality creep into your fan base that it did with boxing, which is you don't know if the results are on the up and up. Like, who's watching? I get it. I've seen his camp come out and make statements on how they could be prosecuted, and I believe that. Again, more so now. But even the way that people perceive these Paul brother fights, like, I think the default position for people, a lot of people when it comes to boxing, major fights, is skepticism. And you do not want to have that with the UFC. You don't want to have that with mixed martial arts. I certainly have not felt that. I've been a longtime fan, and the real fans that I sit with and watch game or fights with and who text with me, that's not a topic of conversation. Was this fight fixed? It happened kind of one time with the TJ Dillashaw thing. And for those of you that don't know, he had a shoulder injury that was like extremely bad. And he went into a fight where within the first round, it was obvious he couldn't move his arm. He went, whoa, this is weird. The James Krause thing I mentioned is he's a former UFC fighter who was turned into a coach that was providing betting picks to the public for a price and had information that was private, like not supposed to be out in the public, had to change the way the UFC did things. This one is going to be very important in terms of the way that they change their operations and figure out probably how to have more transparency, probably do more of an outreach with their fighters to report when these instances happen and where they happen and how they happened. And to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because like that's the question I asked Ariel, for him to answer it, like, we don't know exactly where this is going yet. Ooh, that's a big old problem. Anyway, I got tickets to give away, and then I'm going to jump into a bunch of this Blue Jay stuff that was said yesterday again, to kind of refresh it. I'm not trying to be hot takey with this stuff. I didn't like it. I didn't like a lot of the answers. There were a couple of things that I thought were interesting, but overall, the tone and tenor, it's got to be a little different when you're coming off of a World Series run and the entire nation is completely captivated by what it is you do next. But yes, AC/DC is bringing their Power Up Tour to Rogers Stadium on September 16th, 2026, and we've got your chance to be there. We're giving away 3 pairs of tickets to the show, to this legendary night of rock and roll. Just text the code word THUNDER to 59590 for your chance to win. Tickets go on sale to the general public today at 10 a.m. on Ticketmaster. The contest is Ontario only. Standard message and data rates may apply. Again, the code word is THUNDER. Please subscribe to this podcast if you are a new listener. Leave 5 stars. You can get it on Apple or on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the thumbs up button or leave a comment. Reach out anytime on Twitter and Instagram at JD Bunkis if you got thoughts about the show, even if they're critiques. I try to read as many as I possibly can. Quick break. Let's come back and let's talk about the Blue Jays front office media conference. So I mentioned yesterday, going into this media conference, what I was looking for. Because I don't like moving the goalposts. And I'll say this again now. This is pretty much a summary of some of the things that I spoke on, but also what I had texted good dear friend Ben Ennis, who was watching this as well and who was kind of going through it with me as it was happening. I appreciate that the front office cares about the run, and I thought that it was important to reflect on it just to hear how they felt. They're human beings, and they're invested in this in a different way, but as much as anybody. And that was great. Again, Shapiro's answers on the look back, and even when it came to Bo Bichette, his reflections on him as a younger player, all of that was nice to get. But ultimately, a day like that, for me anyways, is to try to garner information. And Masai Ujiri used to say, I don't know why we have these things so close to the season because we don't really have any answers. And then he would subsequently go on to actually give you a bunch of answers. But if you're going to call them as a team, then I think that you should be prepared to answer some of those questions with the understanding of media and fans alike that certain things you obviously can't touch upon that we're going to ask about. And that some of it is just not far enough down the track yet. But some things you've in my opinion, really got to be prepared for. And some of that is philosophical. But the big ones for me that I wrote down were, how does this increase payroll? And will it? Because you would think on its surface it should. You made a lot of money on this run. People went to these games. You were sold out every single night. You were selling extra tickets. The merch lines, as I pointed out, were kind of embarrassing, if I'm being honest, that like people were lined up throughout the entirety of playoff games to get into the team shop. Go watch the baseball game. You should have been able to walk into that team shop at any moment, and you couldn't because there were too many fans that wanted playoff memorabilia and decided to buy it while they were actually at games that cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Thought it was odd behavior. How much of the roster needs to change? And what is the situation with Bo Bichette? Because he's a pillar of this organization. He is one of the franchise's most important players. He just came back and delivered some incredible World Series moments. And I think in that World Series proved unequivocally how important he is to the formula with this baseball team. They made it there without him. I don't think that they could do that year over year. Bo Bichette's important. So let me start with this. There's a big question about run it back and how much you do versus what you try to add to this team. And this was one of the answers that I really liked, and it's from Mark Shapiro on the philosophy of how much you tinker with a roster that just made a World Series. Here it is.
As you go into an off-season review, you understand that there were some performances that were aberrations, maybe on a good side, some that are where you expect some regression, but you never go into a planning cycle, which is what Ross is leading our group through right now, in the process of leading our group through, without some understanding that you just can't recreate something identical. You've got to build off of what happened, which is a positive. use that as a platform, but know that you have to plan to be better because it won't work exactly the same way next year as it worked this year.
So you need to plan to be better. There's a few ways that you can do that. One is that you bring guys up from your system that help push the players on your roster. They mentioned, and I think it was Shapiro who mentioned it during his media conference, that they had another good season down on the farm and that they got more contribution from a rookie than anybody could have anticipated in Trey Savage. But my understanding of the farm system, and I'll be going over it throughout the offseason with people who are actually experts on it, is that they've kind of removed the guys that are supposed to have an immediate impact from it, and they did. Like, that's Addison Barger. He was great for them. He's got a spot on your roster next season. But I don't know if you have another Addison Barger that's just waiting in the wings to try to push somebody out of a job or replace somebody if there's an injury or supplements a loss through free agency. That has not been my read on the situation whatsoever. Again, their top prospect, Arjun Nimala, is tracking very well, but is still a ways away. Like, he is certainly no Bo Bichette replacement, for example, who, as a kid who could step in and be your shortstop. The other way is through payroll. So I love that philosophy. I think that that's great. That's an awesome answer from Shapiro, where he's discussing they're not going to get overly committed to the idea that the guys that got them there are the guys that are going to get them over the hump. Obviously, it's going to take a large portion of the group anyways, and most of the team is under contract. So you would be assuming that, barring a trade from the roster, which feels, I would say, a little unlikely when it comes to the guys that were on the World Series team, right? Like, if you were to do a list of players that you think they would trade off of the postseason roster, what would that list look like? For me, I just don't see how it has any length to it whatsoever. Like, who would he even be? I don't have a single name for you that I think would be a wise trade move. You'd have to go pretty far down. Like, you're talking, what, Davis Schneider? Okay. Maybe. Not a long list. Not a long list. The most likely way for this team to improve and to build, as Mark says, is through free agency and through spending money. And it's a deep free agent class. There's a lot of players that could help your roster. The Blue Jays have spent, and they've gone over this, that essentially when they've gone to ownership and asked for more money, they've gotten it. And if you're a fan, that should be something that you're pretty comforted in, given where this franchise was for so many years to where it is now in terms of overall payroll in baseball. And yeah, there's been disappointing free agent pursuits, no doubt about it, like Shohei and Soto. The Soto one almost felt like, man, is this even, like, are they actually even in the running on this? Because it was so torturous going through the Shohei stuff. But it seems pretty clear to me that if they get their heart set on someone, and there's been others too who kind of get like forgotten, where they were very, very, very in. Brandon Nimmo, Roki Sasaki. Like, they've opened up the wallet. And even the ones that they've hit on, right? Like the George Springers of the world and the Kevin Gossmans of the world. And to a lesser, but still important to point out part, some of the relief pitching. Like, they spent on Jimmy Garcia. They spent on Jeff Hoffman. They went out and acquired like Andres Jimenez, who everybody thought that was nuts to spend that much money on him. $100 million for a guy with a 6-something OPS who had one really stellar season, and the rest of the resume was like, no, not really. So do I think more money is going to be there? I do. But I'm a little surprised that there was reluctance to just say that if they want to spend more, they can spend more, and not kind of look backwards with it and not say, hey, we have had this in the past. Hey, like, clearly we have improved the payroll. Like, people have celebrated you for that. What they want to know is if you really believe that it's not just right there with your group, which, again, I don't think that you should. There's definitely a run it back component. It was cool to see Shane Bieber return. But what would be even sweeter is if they said, that doesn't take us out of the starting pitching market. And I don't view that as like you putting you in a box or you even putting ownership in a difficult position, or I don't even view that as too soon. Like, that to me is a conversation that these guys could have had with ownership a couple of days after the loss, ahead of a media conference like this. Like, what are we saying about payroll? Do we have the flexibility? I thought it would have been a easy win for this front office to just come out there and say, if we feel as though there is a move that needs to be made, we will have the financial support to make it. Boom. Put that on a poster. Put that on a tweet. Put it on a headline. Have everybody dancing in the streets going. Because, again, I don't think that's a promise. I don't think that's like a, hey, we are going to spend recklessly. No one thinks that that's what these guys are. No one that's paying attention anyways. Like, yeah, I get it. There's always, again, when you have a club, which the Blue Jays are, and the price of entry is nothing, there's no vetting. There's no vetting to be a fan of a sports team. You are or you are not. You're going to get people in there that are dissenting voices or ignorant voices or whatever. Like, again, it doesn't matter. So playing down to the lowest common denominator, which is a fan who reads a quote that says, payroll will be made available to us if we need it, and takes that as an implied promise that they're going to spend on Kyle Tucker, like, don't do that. Yeah, there's no need to do that. What you can do, though, is speak to the people that care, the people that are invested, who watched this run happen and said, hey, can we at least acknowledge that a run like this should have some kind of an impact? The care that the fan base has in this moment has some kind of an impact on the way that you're going to spend this offseason. I don't think that that's like a putting you in a box or a weird commitment. It was just there for the taking, and they didn't really take it. In fact, like Ross spoke later, and I'm not even going to play the clip because he doesn't say anything in it. He gets asked a question about payroll very early on, and he just completely ducks it and doesn't address it whatsoever. Like, there's no mention at all. And that made me feel a little uneasy. I want to know that this team has the money to spend beyond what they have right now and beyond just up to what it was this season. Sorry, makes me greedy. They're top 5. That's amazing. It has been celebrated. It should be celebrated. I actually do think that it's underappreciated by this fan base. Like, people just kind of take it as a given, and they're like, well, we have a big market and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no. Lots of baseball cities have big markets, and a lot of owners don't spend. This one has. But if you're going to take that next step and you really believe, as Shapiro said there, that you can't just lean on your past accomplishments and trust that the magic of this season is going to apply to next year, that tells me that you fundamentally believe, as many of us do, that it's going to take improvements to the roster in order to get you back there. That you can't rely on George Springer being the same guy next season. You can't rely even on Trey Savage pitching as well as he did. That was unbelievable. Sophomore slumps are called that for a reason. You have Kevin Gossman a year older, into his mid-30s. Like, when he says regression candidates or whatever it was that he said there with regression, like, yeah, there's some real stuff with this roster. I think there's also belief that you could have the positive regression, as they say, like guys who continue to outperform their deals. But there are a lot of pieces on this team where you could realistically, and this isn't being a pessimist, but just being a realist, that there could be some steps back on the roster. So what does spending look like? Didn't really get addressed. Thought it was a layup. Okay, this is one where I'll talk to Shi about it more. But then there was the Bieber stuff. And I also thought this was weird. Okay, so here's Mark Shapiro's answer on Shane Bieber coming back.
I don't want to guess at his reasons because it happened, pretty quickly, and so I just know we're better for him having made that decision, and it's a great start to our offseason.
Is the team looking to maybe extend him?
Again, I think that's the process that Ross is working through now, is just kind of establishing an offseason plan. So it's not something we've worked on.
Okay, so the extension stuff, like, I don't really care about because, no one would have viewed the guy opting in as an immediate. Well, I guess you could have that, hey, he's doing this because he thinks he's getting a longer-term deal, whatever. But, yeah, I didn't view that as, like, a huge component to the conversation. What I did find a little strange is that these guys didn't want to get into his reasoning. This wasn't just Mark who said this. This was Ross that said this as well. Like, why is there no communication between them and the player? They're just wanting him to be able to have his moment where he can come out and get the applause from the fan base. It just I don't know why, but it sat with me as strange that these guys were not like, yeah, Shane communicated to us that he wants to be here, that he wants to win here, that he has unfinished business here. Like, who would have been upset about that? Like, who would have been, like, from Shane Bieber's camp, that would have been mad that the front office would have spoken for him in a way that says he's excited to be a Toronto Blue Jay, and the impact of this run and the impact of this fan base in this city and the culture that we've been built in our clubhouse clearly impacted him in a way. It kind of leaves the door open to this interpretation, like, you weren't on the same page with this player, you weren't expecting this from this player, and you're uncertain about this from this player. Anyway, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. I want to get into the real meat of this media conference, and then also talk about it with Shi Davidi. That's next. So that was the Shapiro part of the media conference, who, like I said, I think acquitted himself better yesterday. Had just more of a personal touch to everything, and he does have the added benefit of deflecting certain questions over to, well, that's Ross's department, right? Like, that's nice. Like, I'm going to start doing that in my meetings with my bosses. Is I'm going to go, that's a question for Armin. That's a question for Brandon. Please refer to Armin or Brandon for answers on those topics. So I'm giving Ross that caveat, which is he has the more difficult job to do, in my opinion, when it comes to answering roster questions, because Shapiro, even though I think we all know, has a strong hand in those decisions, not only respects Ross, doesn't want to undermine Ross, similar to what Masai had with Bobby Webster when he was here, and what Shanahan had with Dubas and Tree Living when he was here. You want to make it very clear that your general manager is empowered and has a job for a reason, that you're not just overseeing every little thing. But when it got to Ross, I didn't think that he did very well. I thought maybe this guy's hurting from the run. Maybe this guy is still pissed off about the way he's perceived in the market. Maybe, I don't know how to read it. And I can't play the entire media conference for you. So if you want to watch it yourself, like, it's readily available on sportsnet.ca. I didn't understand why it was so cagey, why answers were ducked, why answers, like, it drives me nuts when media asks a question that's well thought out and prescient and reflective of the interests of the fans, and the answer is something that has nothing to do with the question. And I thought that happened a couple of times with Atkins. And again, the benefit of the doubt that I'm giving the guy is that was a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking loss. And he's got to stand at a podium and talk about it. But that's the job, brother. That's the job. And a lot of people have criticized him, myself included. A lot of people have been very, very down on a lot of his vision and have called for his job. Again, I'm saying me in a lot of this too. So I can see how he would be feeling in a moment like this. I'm trying to empathize as much as I possibly can. That being said, like, he gets asked a question about areas of need, right? And he just says, I already talked about how, like, Shane Bieber addresses one of those areas of need, like we have a starting pitcher, like nothing else. You're not selling your team out by telling people what it is you think you need to improve on. You're not losing ground. You're not losing leverage in the market if you tell people, like, we want to bolster our reliever group. We feel as though we need to still add depth to our roster. Like, there's just ways of doing this that I think are largely inconsequential, but that could have served the moment better. I know, I get it. His job is not to be the PR of the fan base or to be the PR of the Toronto Blue Jays. Ultimately, he is who he is. And that is someone who is a little short and stiff when it comes to dealing with the human side, the reporter side with the job. That's always been the case, right? Like that's something that they've been criticized for from the very outside, is like their ability to communicate with the fans and do it in a way that makes people feel like there's a connection there. Not everybody can be Alex Anthopoulos. Not everybody can be Masai Ujiri in that regard. Like there's different traits, different strokes for different folks. But again, like this is a time when you want to be consoling your fan base, where you want to be giving them comfort that there's reasons that you should stay excited and not just dwell on being that close to winning a World Series against one of the teams that it matters most to beat. That in a competitive climate where other teams are going to be looking to retool, in a competitive climate where other teams are going to be looking to bolster and spend, that you are going to be right there at the forefront of it, that you are going to be at the precipice of that. And that brings me to the Bo. So I actually think that the Bo answer was probably as good of an answer as he had. Because, like, there's a Hoffman thing where he mentioned Hoffman essentially is open to whatever role they need him to be in, that he's not married to being a closer, I think is like the exact verbiage that he used. I can play that clip later. But the Bo answer, at least he gave you a little bit of something, which the reason why I'm not playing any of these other clips, and I'm just kind of telling you to trust me in terms of the read on it, is that there's nothing there. There was no substance. There was just a moment where he said he didn't want to put himself in a box, and that seemed to be actually the most important piece of it, because he clearly did not want to give any answer that was going to make a single person lean into believing one thing or another. But after watching this, and I will say too, like Shapiro being so sentimental about Bo and thinking about Bichette and him being a rookie and shagging ground balls with his kid, it made me a little leery about what the situation is with that guy. He's talking about respecting his ability to go to free agency when that's not the way that teams normally handle superstars. The way teams normally handle superstars is they say, yeah, we're doing everything possible to get this guy done with a deal. We're offering him contracts that jump the market to ensure that he doesn't go get entertained by other people and starts to get ideas about playing somewhere else. So I hated the Bo stuff. I've been on record saying they need to bring this guy back. And I had a great talk with BNS, Ben Nicholson Smith, about how, yeah, you can't put yourself in a box like that because, yeah, maybe you do go out and get a stud third baseman. You move Ernie Clement. That was his answer over to second base. And like your team maybe has a shot at improving. Of course, there's definitely, I guess, a path there, specifically with third base and moving Ernie over. But I don't think that you get better losing Bo Bichette. He's one of the best hitters in baseball. If he's not willing to play second base, I guess that's a problem. And they're not going to throw that out there at a media conference. They're not going to let the Wolves just come out and have that be part of the conversation after a guy just played on one leg in a World Series, hit you a 3-run home run, drove in a bunch of runs, hit 300. Like, ain't going to happen. But I'm not really understanding the reluctance to just put it out there and say, like, yeah, we're doing everything we can to bring back Bo Bichette. We recognize how important Bo Bichette is to this thing. We understand the yin and the yang that is Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. when it comes to the personality types. We understand that people want to see the job finished with these two. We understand that there was a moment in time where it seemed like there was a promise to Blue Jays fans from the outset of these two players that only one would be returning on a long-term contract because that's just the most likely outcome. But that this World Series run changed things. Bo Bichette's market changed things. That making it to the doorstep of winning a World Series impacted the way that they view this player. And the answer was, we'll be in his market. Left me a little cold. Anyways, Shi Davidi, senior MLB columnist for Sportsnet. He joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Not as good.
I gathered.
Yeah. Well, okay. you know me, I'm an emotional guy, and I think that I try to represent sports fandom and try to keep that a piece of me. But I said it off the top that I thought Shapiro acquitted himself fairly well, that I liked the way that he spoke on the run. I think that I appreciated, he's always been that guy where he's got that like Moneyball, how do you not get romantic about baseball about him? When he speaks, it can be articulate. He has the benefit of being able to deflect questions over to Ross, and rightfully so, because that's his general manager and that's his job. And overall, I didn't really find things from Shapiro that I was like, didn't really love that. I guess the one area that I would probably critique is I would have liked a little bit more conclusivity on the openness of ownership when it comes to expanding their payroll. That when he's had this answer about, hey, we've had the money available to us, and that it would have been nicer and cleaner if they would have said, hey, we've actually had conversations about this. And when we're talking about not relying on the magic of this season, just completely translating it to next year, that we know that you want to improve, that it was like, yeah, and we'll have the money to do so, but whatever. I didn't really understand Atkins' position at this media conference. I found him to be overly cagey, way too guarded, that he kind of dismissed a lot of questions that were asked by the media and sort of went into different answers, and that we just didn't really get too much outside of Hoffman is open to moving off of the closer job, and that, yeah, they're going to have more conversations with Bo.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. And I'm going to put it this way. I think after the Game 7 loss, I'm not sure what anyone could have said that would have made people feel great, right?
Of course.
There's not a lot that can be said about that you want to charge up. And I think the second thing is, and I feel like there's been maybe a discernible shift in the last 12 months or so in terms of just saying less, right? And the organization just kind of essentially trying to let their actions speak for them, right? And not make promises and not do this and just say, hey, judge our work, right? And that's kind of where I'm at with yesterday, right? There really wasn't offered a lot. I think the one payroll comment that stuck out to me was Mark Shapiro said, we're into, I believe the term he used was championship caliber payroll, and we're not going to move backwards from that. And so I think that's essentially what you want to hear. And then everything else, I think they're very, very careful about what they're throwing out there, because they want to give the industry, they want to give agents, they want to give other teams as little as possible about their intentions, and then they can control a little bit more about their intentions as they're having their conversations. So that's my read from yesterday. There wasn't a ton there, and I do think that if you're looking at it realistically, there are a number of different things that this team can do. This isn't like previous years where it's like, okay, last year the bullpen's on fire. You absolutely have to extinguish that, right? The offense, you need to add some impact to that offense.
Yeah, you need power.
It wasn't productive enough. This year, I don't know if there's that glaring need. It's just get better, because they have a pretty good floor everywhere, and essentially they're in a position that they can chase ceiling wherever it becomes available to them. So I think that's sort of my overall takeaways from yesterday. Yeah, there wasn't really a ton there to work off of, and I think to a degree that's not unreasonable considering what just happened last Saturday, and that we're really at the very beginning of an off season where a lot of the front office wouldn't have had as much opportunity to dive into as they normally might.
Yeah, I feel that, and I can empathize with that. And I don't necessarily, and granted, I'm not a baseball executive and I've never ran in those circles, so I don't know if there's actually a tangible, what's the word? There's a tangible reason to believe that you could be hurt by saying something when it comes to the market. Like, I don't know why, if you're saying, yeah, we're going to be pushing to add, we're going to be pushing to up the payroll, that in some way hurts you. Or if you're going to be saying, like, we want to be in on major free agents, that's going to hurt you in the free agent market or whatever. Like, I guess the thing that kind of sat a little bit uncomfortable for me was Okay, when it comes to Bo, you're talking about him from like a sentimental standpoint when you're Shapiro. You're talking about him like about him shagging balls with your kid, and that you want to respect his ability to go to free agency. Like he's earned the ability to go for free agency. I know you don't want to tread on the negotiations. You don't want to get them into the public eye. But why do you think there seems to be a reluctance to just say like, hey, we're trying to negotiate with this guy before he can be a free agent, before he's meeting with other guys. Like we want to make a competitive offer to Bo ahead of the market getting a shot at him. We want to jump it the way that we have with other stars like Vladdy.
Sure. I think that's fair. I think to me, a lot of the conversation, obviously there's some differences because one, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was still under control,
Yep.
whereas Bichette is now a free agent and able to talk to all 30 clubs. But I do feel there's a similar tone in the conversations around both players where there's almost like a reluctance to be overly exuberant and overly complimentary about the player, and to not commit yourself to something, maybe as a protection that they don't want to raise hopes that maybe aren't met or whatever the case may be. I'm not 100% certain about that, but I do sense a similarity in just that discourse where you're like, this seems kind of cold and this seems a little bit disconnected. And it's like everyone's kind of saying the right things, but it doesn't feel like it. Ultimately, I think, again, actions will dictate here.
For sure.
Right? When push came to shove, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got his money.
Yep.
That deal is done, and he's a lifetime Blue Jay. And will that happen again with Bo Bichette? I think that's part of it. And I do think there is a degree of, and I felt this more with Bo than with Vladdy throughout the different processes, where I feel like both sides need the market a little bit to help them understand the value a little bit, just frame where it is. In just casual conversations I've had with people over recent weeks, I've heard anything from, Dansby Swanson, Marcus Semien money, which is like in $175, $180 million range, to Xander Bogaerts, which is in the 300 range, right? Like people are thinking anything within that scale. Mm-hmm. And so that's a pretty wide range of opinion. Now we'll see when teams actually start bidding and they have to put pen to paper what that actually looks like and where that lands. But I just feel like Bo's such a unique player because he's not strictly an average guy. He's not strictly a power guy. Is he really a shortstop long term? Is he more of a second baseman? There are just a lot of pieces that there's some eye of the beholder stuff that makes identifying a number maybe a little bit more challenging with him. And ultimately, we'll see where it goes. So I completely understand where you're coming from, but this doesn't feel foreign to me in terms of how this team is operated.
Sure.
And I'm not sure that we should prejudge outcome based on the tenor or the tone of what they're saying right now.
Yeah, I don't think I am. I led my show saying the one good thing about this is there's the saying, right? Like success changes people. And the one positive from this that you can look at is the success that the Blue Jays had on this run did not change Shapiro and Atkins one iota when it came to the way that they approached the media and the fans. Like that is who they have been consistently throughout their careers here. Yeah, and I think to their detriment. And honestly, yeah, of course you're right that the results are going to matter more than anything that they say on November 6th yesterday. Like that to me is clear and obvious. And I do remain optimistic about things like payroll, things like them trying to improve this baseball team, them understanding, like I said, one of the most important answers to me was Shapiro saying that they're not just looking at this run and thinking that it's going to be easily replicable to just get back into a World Series next year, that there's going to be some lifting that needs to get done. What I don't really get is you have you made a point earlier about how after people were hurt, there's nothing that's going to change the way that they feel today. I would say that the exuberance that I saw from Shane Bieber just opting into a one-year contract and the feeling of, hey, this guy wants to be back here. He didn't go back to the market. that people were stoked on that. People were pumped on it. It was like the first little glimmer. I equated it to, it's the first time after a breakup where a pretty girl shows some interest in you, like smiles at you, and you're like, oh, I feel like a human being again. And that they did have this opportunity yesterday to kind of, bolster that belief, bolster that hope in some ways that made it not feel the way that it did. So, yes, do I think that it's largely inconsequential? Absolutely. But do I feel like it missed the mark, especially the Atkins part of it? Yes, 100%. So to the Bo thing, okay, I agree with you. I've had similar conversations, right? Like I try to ask every single person to an annoying degree, and like you guys are, the baseball people are worked to death, and I'm still badgering going like, what's Bo's market? What's Bo's market? And this has been a year-long conversation, and it's been all over the map. 100%. Like totally understand the idea of the market shaping his value and the Blue Jays waiting for that to happen before they decide to either pounce or come close or whatever the hell it is. Maybe they feel emboldened by the fact that, like, if they can match an offer, that all things being equal, Bo would choose to remain in Toronto. I guess the underlying fear of this is that they might feel as though the market goes well beyond what their evaluation is. And secondarily to that is the idea that I don't think he is a not long-term shortstop the way that you put it. I don't think he's a short-term shortstop. You have Andres Jimenez. It's clear that he's the better option there. If Bo Bichette's going to return as a Toronto Blue Jay, I kind of think that it can't be a Derek Jeter situation. He's got to play second base, and I don't know if we have any idea as to how open he is to that.
So I think that ultimately, from what I've gotten to know of Bo over the whatever it is, nearly a decade since the Blue Jays drafted him, that the one thing more than anything else that drives him is winning. Right? He is desperate to win. And I think what he showed during the World Series was the ultimate demonstration of that, where, you know, a pending free agent playing essentially on one leg with a pretty severe knee injury, rushing back from that, playing a position he'd never played before at the big league level, hadn't played even in the minor leagues in 6 years, 7 years. I mean, that to me just tells you what the guy is all about. And so I think that if he were in a situation where it was clear to him that this is better for the sake of the team and this was a clearer path to victory, I don't think that would stop him.
Yeah.
Or that he would stand in the way of that. So to me, I really think that's the secondary thing. Ultimately, it's, can they find a value that makes sense? I don't think the shortstop second base thing it would be what tips the scale here one way or the other. Does he see a sustainable path to winning? And is the contract market fair within the market space? And, you know, I don't even think it's about sort of maxing out and getting some sort of obscene number. I think it's just getting a reasonable market value for him in a place where he can win not just one time, but over an extended period. So that to me is the crux of the conversation. And I think second base shortstop works itself out.
So when I last spoke to Bo, and this was years ago now, there was the idea that the Jays might consider pursuing Andrelton Simmons, who at the time was arguably the best defensive shortstop in all of baseball. And we asked Bo about it point blank, and his answer was, I want to play shortstop, but if there is a clear and obvious upgrade at the position, I'm open to moving positions. So I trust him at that word, and I think that would be the case. I do wonder if it is a little different when he's being offered another shortstop job, and there's all things being equal, like how much that actually tips the scales. That's I think the way that I'm reading whether or not that's actually like a component of it. The market value one is obviously the most important to me because I think the Blue Jays just proved that there's a sustainable path to winning by saying, yeah, payroll is going to be at a championship level. We're not going to be taking a step back there. You just made a World Series, and you've got a roster that is, full of guys that I think do show a lot of promise for the future. So my hope is that they're not looking at this and saying they have this firm value for Bo as of today, that they've already set their feet in the ground and said, we wouldn't go past this number if that number happens to materialize on the market. but that they will at least come close to it and that they will at least give some kind of a competitive offer in the market, not just be like quote unquote in it. Okay, I want to move on. The payroll thing. Would you be surprised if payroll didn't make a meaningful jump up?
I think that the way that the Blue Jays think about payroll, and this is a shift from what maybe we're used to. There's sort of the rough number, and then there's what do other opportunities present themselves that you can make a justifiable business case for.
Yeah, like the Soto Shohei of it all.
Soto Shohei, or even last year. I don't necessarily think that the initial plan was for Blue Jays to end up in the payroll with the payroll where it was, but then there's Hoffman and there's Scherzer. They ended up getting Santander done, and so that probably went a little bit beyond, and maybe if things had played out differently, maybe Alonso ends up here as part of it. So I think that yes, it could take a jump, or it could rise, could be right around the same levels. I really think that's dependent on what opportunities they believe are available to them in the market, and then what becomes realistic for them.
Why did it seem like they were so surprised by Shane Bieber opting in, and like it was as though they had not had a conversation with him about it?
Well, I can tell you that as far back or as recently as, towards the end of the Mariners series, the conversations I was having was the expectation was, he's going to market, right? And so, I'm sure that there were more conversations, and I'm sure that the Blue Jays did not want to speak on Shane Bieber's behalf and just let him explain it when the time comes. But I do think they were surprised, right? My belief was when they made the trade, they expected it to be a rental. They thought that if Shane Bieber has any sort of degree of performance akin to what he showed, that he would take that to the market. And just talking to a couple of agents, they were surprised too. They were like, "Yeah, that's a pretty good way to go to the market." But obviously, Shane Bieber felt differently, and that's a great compliment to the Blue Jays for getting him there. And you can explain it in a couple of different ways. Is he just is this maybe the first step towards a longer term contract, and this didn't want to get it muddled with other teams and free agency, or is he looking at it as the Blue Jays offer him a great opportunity to platform again next year, and then go to the market at the end of the 26 season and then really max out then? Or maybe he's just not certain about where he's at physically and wanted a little bit of safety in the meantime to figure it out. I think it could be any of those things. Ultimately, he decided that this was a good enough spot for him to stay. There's no doubt that he would have been able to get the $12 million that he essentially opted in for, because he had a $4 million buyout. He would have been able to replicate that, if not more, on the open market. And so that's a great thing for the Blue Jays. This is a gift that fell into their laps, and now they've got some things to figure out.
Okay, so I agree. I will say this, though. The way that they answered the questions, I hear what you're saying about, hey, give him the opportunity to get the credit from the fan base, saying, like, I viewed it as this is the place I want to be. My wife and I got excited for baseball again here. We view this as a championship contender, and I wasn't ready to leave. Like, yada, yada, yada. Like, there's so many great ways that this guy can spin it, and that's the way that I've interpreted this. Because again, like you will never be able to convince me that, short of he's hurt today, that he could not have gotten more on the open market than $12 million a season, and certainly not over a multi-year contract. I just thought it was a little perplexing that they kept doing this thing of, hey, we'll let Shane explain the reasons why or whatever, because it was, again, another layup where they just simply could have been, hey, we had conversations with Shane and he's excited to be back. Because the way that it was rolled out, it did make me feel that it was more the last point you made, where it was like, wait, how much of this do they believe in his long-term health? How much of this is like him trying to rebound? Like, it took a little wind out of the sails for me in terms of the enthusiasm I have for him returning. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to him speaking. The other interesting point was Jeff Hoffman, the closer comment, because, yeah, it wasn't a firm commitment that he's not going to be the closer, but it also was fairly interesting that the one time Ross really seemed to open up was being like, this is the great thing about Jeff Hoffman. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need to be the closer. These guys have already spent on bullpen guys. Like Jimmy Garcia's contract was fairly big. Jeff Hoffman's contract, like you just said, was an opportunity that presented itself. To me, pretty clearly, the bullpen is one area of absolute need for this baseball team. And there's like real closers on the market. There's Suarez, there's Diaz. Like there's a few guys that would really shift the perception of this. And yet, historically, this group has been one where they don't love the idea of spending money on free agent closers. And that's kind of been one of those things that's bandied around baseball, like, hey, you don't do it. Smart front offices don't spend a ton of money on relief pitching because it's volatile. But do you have an early read on, whether or not that is going to be an area where they don't just bolster it, but they get aggressive with some of the names that are at the top of the pile and actually do look at Hoffman as a guy that needs to be bumped down?
So you're right. It's not just that they haven't spent on closers. They haven't spent on relievers in general, right? Like the two biggest free agent contracts for relievers were both last year, one of them to Garcia and the other to Hoffman. So we have seen a change in that behavior. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the earlier point I made where I said they're in a position where they just have to look for maximum impact, and it could be, and you could find it in a number of different places in the roster. And if you can, assuming Jimmy Garcia is healthy next year, if you can build out a bullpen that's something like Garcia, Hoffman, and somebody else, that's pretty good. Right? That's a pretty good way to shorten games and make it easier on your rotation. And then you also, I think the other thing is that we've seen with bullpen usage, and we saw how, 3s and 4s and back-to-backs and extended outings wore out Jeff Hoffman over the course of the season, that if you've got more options capable of doing that, you have a better chance of keeping them fresh over the course of a long season and potentially a postseason as well. So, I do think that they will look at every aspect of the market. I think they will look at maximum impact. I think that they're going to look at, like, where can you get an elite player and where can you fit in? And if that happens to be a closer, then great. That's a good upgrade. And like you can always add a reliever, you can always add a starter, you can always make room, right? So I think that is an evergreen place where you can find gains. And then similarly, I think that exists on other spots on the roster where, maybe you do create a redundancy and then subtract from it afterwards and, find some way to turn things around if it's getting you an upgrade in a couple of areas.
Yeah, and what I will say about the bullpen is, do I think it needs bolstering? Absolutely, I do. Do I hope that this isn't like, hey, we're getting Jimmy Garcia back, who's been injury-prone the last 2 seasons, and he's replacing Santander, and we feel great about that? No, I don't. I'd love to see them add one of these guys, especially within the context of, okay, I'm both comforted by the idea that you can go get relief pitching during the season and ahead of the deadline, but also, and it's a special circumstance because we're talking about like Mason Miller and Johan Duran, right? 2 of legitimately the best arms in all of baseball, not even just relievers, but like best arms, period. So they went for these astronomical prices. I don't know, like you were able to get Sir Anthony Dominguez for a price, like a real price, but for way, 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 way down the line, you could do something like that. But the context of the price going up at the deadlines for relief pitching and your need out of the gate after a long postseason run, I do think that it makes the import a little bit greater than in years past.
Yep, and that's fair. And I do think for where they are as a team right now, if you're going to be this type of contender, the bullpen is an area that you bolster. I mean, look at the Phillies in recent years. Look at the Dodgers. Look at the Padres. Like teams who have been around it. The Yankees last year at the deadline. Like teams who are in this mix, they get dudes, and and really try to max out their bullpen as a way to shorten games.
Yep.
Because there is that area of volatility that if someone's having a down year, you shift them in and out of roles based on performance. And again, with pitching, as much as you may think that you may think, okay, we're good, we've got a lot of depth. And this is a terrible cliche, but it is true. Like, you just literally never have enough. You chew through so much pitching over the course of the year. And like, you think about like where the Blue Jays staff was, right? Different points and how many different guys they needed them to get through the season. Mm-hmm. It's kind of lost now, but Bowden Francis gave them half a season of starts and they needed them, even though some of them weren't great. And he was fighting through shoulder pain that whole time.
They threw a bullpen game against the Yankees
in the postseason by design.
Yeah.
Although I will say that strategically, it's not the comment that it used to be, right? Where before you'd be like, oh, this is desperation. I think teams look at it now, not just the Blue Jays, and just like, hey, this is probably a good way to get through a game. And a lot of times they're right. So I think we say that like derisively, but we shouldn't, because I just think that's a legitimate baseball strategy.
I agree.
In today's game.
I agree. I just think that with that one, it was because like Scherzer was a question mark at the time. Bassett wasn't healthy at the time. Like they ended up getting a lot out of Max, and and Bassett came back and was unreal out of the bullpen. It was the right strategy, no doubt about it. But also like just to the point of they needed more pitching, or like you can always use more pitching. Yeah. Part of that was because beyond 3 on their roster, and thanks to a rookie that showed up literally who was in A-ball that year, they were able to have 3 starters in that series alone.
Yeah, and again, it just reinforces the point that it takes so much. And so even if you think like, okay, we're positioned great, just keep adding there, because there's going to be a need. You obviously don't want to create a situation where there's not clarity about roles, or there's not enough work to go around. But it's, again, to not use another terrible cliche, but these things do figure themselves out a lot of the time. And just because someone invariably will go down and someone will struggle. And so, I think that they absolutely should be adding to the bullpen. I would fully expect for them to add to the bullpen. I mean, very realistic scenarios. You see them adding a bat, you see them adding a couple relievers, you see them adding a starter this offseason, and all of that makes sense. And I just think that yesterday they were just not wanting to telegraph anything, or not wanting to commit to anything, at least at this point.
Okay, so last point of conversation here is just the starting pitching. Because Bieber opting in is great. Like, assuming he is healthy, which I think we should at this point, then that's awesome. That gives you a pretty clear 1, 2, 3. Eric Lauer, I guess, found out through that media conference that he's still under contract, which was like I don't know what
he knew he had another year of arbitration.
Oh, okay, because the way that it was like framed at the media conference, I was like, wait, is Eric Lauer firing his agent because he thought he was going to free agency? Like, what exactly is this? There's also the prospect of Louis Varland getting stretched out and becoming a starting pitcher, which was part of the conversation when he was first acquired. I don't know how realistic you view that, or whether you think that's part of the plan. But yeah, Bassett's a free agent, and Scherzer has yet to say whether or not he is retired, and I don't even know if there would be willingness for them to come ask him to return at his, age 43 season. Like, yeah, it's pushing it, so you can understand why they wouldn't there. But then there's this Barrios thing, and they talked about it, like he's going to be ready for spring and he's out rehabbing. But it was weird, man. He wasn't around. He was nowhere visible. There was some, I think, uncomfortability when it came to the decision to remove him from the starting rotation at the end of the season. Then they threw out like the injury thing, and it was hard not to read that to some degree as like them covering for him a touch with the injury, and that some of it was just like, okay, fatigue or regression or whatever the hell it is. From the outside, it feels weird, and I've talked to a few people about him, and they've given me the same feeling back. Like, there's a weirdness there, and I'm curious if you think that they would entertain offers for him. Like, what is your belief in terms of his certainty that he is back with the Toronto Blue Jays next season, like that he is the number 4 in that rotation?
I mean, it was certainty, as certain as you can be, I think. Okay. Like, for me, a couple things. So, like, he was definitely grinding physically through a lot of that season, right? And so when he ended up on the IL, like, I think that was incredibly difficult for him because his whole career has been about being available and being able to make starts and pitching through whatever and just fighting through every physical ailment they can imagine. And for him to finally surrender to an ailment and to go on the IL, I am certain was immensely difficult for him, right? Like, he's a proud guy, and again, making starts and being there is part of his identity. So I think we would have had to have been shaken to some degree by that. And, he was around most of the postseason. When asked about it, Ross Atkins said he just needed to be with his family towards the end when he wasn't with the team anymore. I think the appearance is a little bit odd and a little bit unusual, and I can understand some of those pieces, but I also feel like there are some pretty reasonable explanations for all of it. For me, the question is, how healthy is he? And is the issue in his elbow and the other physical ailments he battled through this year, is that going to impact him next year in any way, shape, or form? Or is he going to and allow him to be the pitcher he can be, or is he going to continue to have to fight through things and be maybe the lesser version of himself that he was at times this season? And so that to me is the primary question. And, I don't know that we'll know for certain until we see what he's like in spring training. And then again, can he hold up as well? The other piece is, I know that he's going to very much want to pitch for Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic next year. Puerto Rico's hosting a group. Pitching at home would definitely be of significant meaning to him. Will that be something that makes sense? Does that have to be a sacrifice he makes? I think that's going to be an issue that for not just for Barrios, but for a lot of players who are coming off injuries with where things are at. So I do think there's a lot there, but I don't know that it's suspicious or this major question the way people are making out to be. But ultimately, we're going to have to see how that plays out.
I'm going to remain suspicious. I won't react to whatever he does with Puerto Rico because last time I watched him pitch for Puerto Rico, I think he gave up a first pitch home run, and it was coming off of his disastrous first season on his contract. And I went, oh my God, this is done. Like this is going to be the worst contract in sports. And then he was incredible that year. So I won't read. I promise you that I won't overreact to if he pitches poorly for Puerto Rico this time because I already did that once, and I'm a big believer in don't make the same mistake twice. I find it a little weird where the starting pitching is. Like with Bieber opting in, it's again obviously a good thing. Barrios being this huge question mark, the Varland stuff, the Lauer stuff, like the clear desire I believe from most people in the fan base for Chris Bassett to return. Also the import of. Like, I don't like the idea of losing Bassett and Scherzer and both those personalities in the same offseason, considering how important I think they were to the makeup of this group from a personality standpoint. And so I'd like Bassett back. It's hard to envision him being put down in pen as a starter. I don't think that he would want to make himself a reliever at this juncture of his career when he just came off this season that he did from a starting pitching standpoint. And yet I also can't help but feel like it would really behoove them to add yet another guy that gives them insurance for a Savage slump, for a Bieber injury or not being fully back from Tommy John, or a Barrios not finding his old self, a Gossman step back because of his age. Like, I kind of still want them to be going after more starting pitching internally with Bassett, and yet I'd like to see them be aggressive still in the starting pitching market with some of the higher-end guys. Like, it's a very weird place to be with the bodies that they have.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think one of the points that you touched on there, I think it's been said a little bit, but I'm not sure people recognize how essential Bassett was to what was essentially the operating system of that clubhouse. He is the guts of that group in a lot of ways. Gossman too, and George Springer, of course, and Vlad and Bo, but Bassett really. I've heard from so many people just how essential he is, and I think that's an important piece to recognize about him. And he is interesting in terms of, he's going into his age 37 season, and I thought what we saw from him as a reliever was incredibly
Amazing.
interesting, and you wonder what that would look like over the course of the season. He definitely believes, and rightly so, that he can still start. I think there will be a number of teams that will look at him as a starter. I do think there will be some clubs who will say to him, hey, what do you think about some sort of hybrid role or some sort of creative role like this? How do you feel about that as well? And the conversations that I've had with him, I think that he might consider that, but he still does believe that he can start and be an effective starter. So, yeah, I think everything you said there, I agree wholeheartedly with. I think push comes to shove, Varland's in the bullpen. We may see the Blue Jays do that thing that they do with a lot of guys where come spring training, we'll stretch you out as a starter, we'll see where that goes, and at the end of spring, he's back in the bullpen. But maybe there's a need, maybe someone could get hurt in spring training and things change. But I think all things being equal, right now, Blue Jays hunt for impact. You just get pieces, as many pieces as you can, and then you worry about how they fit later in some ways, because you do have a lot of versatility with a number of different players in a number of different ways.
Yeah. Shi, I really appreciate you coming on today, man. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, pleasure as always.
Yep, take care, man. Shi Davidi, senior MLB columnist. All right, quick break. I want to come back, and I need to talk about the Canada jerseys, the sweaters. All right, very abbreviated what we missed because we ran long with Shi, which is a shame because the producers had like a ton of bangers today that we might even use on other shows. Like I think we definitely have to use a couple of these on other shows. But Team Canada revealed their uniforms for the Olympics yesterday, and there's just no way around it. They're horrible. They're genuinely terrible. These are the worst sweaters that Canada has ever rolled out, and I don't even know how a human being could possibly defend them. Even so, I've gotten back a lot of, hey, JD, the white ones are fire, and I'm like, kind of, except for it's like 2 tones of red on the stripes. This is way too cute. The emblem, the all blacks, and the black maple leaf. This upset me. I'm a grown man. I'm embarrassed to say that. I'm deeply embarrassed to say that these made me feel bad, that this affected me. Like Canada's returning to the Olympics for the first time in over a decade, and this is what we're rolling out? Like that? Take them off the screen. I don't even want to look at them. My word. They're not going to do this, but you got to redo them. Try again. Please, for the sake of our nation. Those cannot be, we cannot wear those sweaters for the first time. Like, that's Sidney Crosby. He walks off with a gold, and that's what we got to see him at. Like, what are we doing? We're getting too cute, man. We're getting too cute. It's too much black in the uniform. And that sucks. That's awful. Next.